On Olympus, the goddess Hera was walking from one side to the other observing her magnificent temple as she did every morning, when suddenly she noticed that her husband had stopped making a fuss and his voice was nowhere to be heard. The goddess, desperate, began to look for Zeus since for a long time the god had been running away to have affairs with other goddesses and mortals. Hera looked for Zeus everywhere but did not find him, so she thought the worst. "Surely he came down to earth to look for carnal adventures, but he will pay for them," said Hera to herself. When she took a look towards the earth, she saw how an immense black cloud covered all her sight. The puzzled goddess did not understand why the dense fog covered the sky. If that morning the sun was stronger than ever, she immediately thought of her husband. "I can't believe it! Zeus has probably caused all this," said Hera in a rage, and so she began to descend to earth. Indeed, it was her husband. The god had come down to the banks of the river Inachus to meet the maiden Io, with whom he had a secret affair. Io was a beautiful young woman who worked as a priestess of the goddess Hera. The nymph was very accomplished in her duties and kept eternal respect for the gods. Before the love affair between Zeus and Io, the beautiful young woman had a peculiar dream that forced her to sleep with the king of the gods. It is said that Ling, daughter of Echo, had sent her a dream in which the young woman was ordered to unite with Zeus. That dream disturbed the young woman too much, who immediately alerted her father to give her advice. When Io told her father about the strange dream she had had, he told her that they should go and consult with the Oracle of Delphi, in order to be sure of what they should do with the prophecy. Soon after, when they heard the oracle, he indicated that there was no way for the beautiful woman to escape her destiny, and above all she had to fulfill the prophecy, so as not to feel the wrath of Zeus. Io, confused, made the decision to do what her dream said, and fearlessly sought the god to make her his own on the river bank. Zeus, enchanted by the spectacular beauty of the young woman, thought of nothing else but having her in his arms, so on the day of their meeting he sent a huge dark gray mist overhead so that his wife Hera would not discover them. To Zeus' misfortune, his consort was too cunning and began to pacify the clouds as she descended from Olympus to look for her husband. Thus, during the journey, when she had already vanished a few clouds, she managed to see her husband in the distance on the bank of the river. Io realized that the goddess was on her way and immediately alerted Zeus. But when Zeus saw himself trapped, he thought of nothing else but to turn the beautiful Io into an animal, so as not to be discovered by his wife being unfaithful. Zeus had turned his mistress into a striking and beautiful white cow. She was so beautiful, she looked like a divine being. Thus, as soon as Io was turned into an animal, Zeus dissimulated as if he had been contemplating the beast all the time. Hera slowly walked up her husband's back until she was very close to him. "Zeus, what are you doing down here? How much are you staring at that animal?" said the goddess, very confused. Zeus immediately turned around and greeted her with a huge passionate kiss, trying to throw the situation off. "I have been gazing at this beautiful animal. It is so beautiful that I can't stop looking at it. Its splendor is unique." "Have you ever seen another animal like it?" said Zeus, hiding his nervousness. Hera stared at him, and with a frown said, "Haven't you been with the cow?" "No, my dear, how can you think of it? The cow was what caught my attention, but I just came for a walk," Zeus answered, raising his head to the sky. Hera was too cunning, and knew that her husband was cheating on her, so, to teach him a lesson, she said, "You are right, my husband. The cow is beautiful and vigorous. I want her for myself, so I will take her." Zeus was terrified to hear his wife's words. He could not believe that Hera would take his beloved Io, but he had no other choice, so, hiding his concern, Zeus told her to take her to Olympus with pleasure, for she was made for the gods. Zeus showed no interest in the cow after handing her over to his wife, and so she took him by the hand and led him away from the white heifer to Olympus. Hera knew perfectly well that her husband was lying, and decided to call her loyal friend Argos to help her take revenge and make the decision regarding the animal. The goddess pretended not to see Io next to Zeus, as well as the transformation of her priestess. "Argos, I need you. I have a job for you, but you must be as discreet and attentive as possible," said the goddess. Argos was a 100-eyed giant, a creature that Hera cared for and defended, first and foremost, for he had proven his great loyalty to the goddess on several occasions. "Keep an eye on the white calf lying on the river bank, and on no account go to take your eyes off him. I will soon decide his fate," said Hera. Zeus, hearing what his wife ordered, decided to call his son Hermes to help him save the life of his beloved Io. The herald of Olympus quickly arrived at his father's call, and in surprise agreed to help him. "Pursue Argos, and keep me informed of everything he does with the calf. Do not let him be harmed," said Zeus to his son. Hermes from that moment flew to where the giant Argos was, who kept a watchful eye on Io at all times, for he did not take his many eyes off her. When suddenly the goddess Hera arrived, she went to Argos and full of anger told him to take the animal far away from Olympus, so far away that he would never see her again, because Io, Zeus' lover, was locked up in the animal. Hermes listened to Hera's orders, and with his incredible speed, went to look for his father to inform him about the fatal decision that the goddess had taken. Hermes desperately called Zeus, and once he told him what had happened, his father grabbed him by the arms and told him that he had to save Io in any way. The young god immediately returned to where Io was, to follow in his footsteps. Argos had camouflaged the calf so that no one could see her, and so he traveled to Egypt with her as a prisoner. During the journey, the young god did not force Argos, because the giant was so strong and powerful that he could kill Io without mercy. Moreover, his 100 eyes would not let any intruder come near the cow. The nymph was imprisoned by the terrible monster, and every day she suffered for not having her freedom. Days went by, and no matter how hard Hermes searched for a way to attack, Argos was too cunning, for even when he rested, he kept several eyes watching the animal. Seeing the desperation of Io, the messenger of Olympus planned his rescue, and thus, the next morning he disguised himself as a shepherd while Argos was taking Io out to graze. The god took out a flute and began to play it very close to where the giant was. Immediately, the beautiful melody intoned by Hermes caught his attention, and he shouted at him, telling him to come a little closer and to please play more music for him. The wily god nodded his head, for his plan was working. So, Hermes began to play with more delicacy and passion the instrument, and little by little the eyes of the fearsome monster were closing, but unfortunately it was not enough, because there were still many others open. Hermes did not give up and began to play with the flute to get the attention of Argos again. "Tell me, what is the story of this curious instrument?" said Argos sleepily. Hermes, amazed, approached him and began to tell him in great detail the story of the magical flute, as if it were a children's story, so that after a few minutes, Argos fell into a deep sleep, and this time all his eyes had closed. Seizing the opportunity, Hermes regained his form, took his mighty caduceus, and touched the dreaded guardian monster, inducing it into a powerful deep sleep. After making absolutely sure that the creature did not wake up, he took his magical divine sword, and with a great war cry decapitated it, killing it instantly. At last, he had regained Io's freedom, but she was still agonizing in the cow's body, so the divine herald went in desperation to seek Zeus to reverse the spell and end the nymph's ordeal. Hera had learned of the cruel death of her loyal lackey, and full of sadness went to look for his body to pay homage to him. The goddess took the 100 eyes of Argos, and placed them in the beautiful feathers of her peacock in his honor, immortalizing him forever. Regarding Io, Hermes' request had failed, for just as he was about to give the news to his father, he was rammed by the goddess Hera, who threatened the gods with death if they interfered to save the nymph. Hermes, surprised, understood Hera's rancor, so he decided to withdraw from the matter so as not to arouse the fury of his father's wife. On the other hand, continuing with her revenge, the goddess Hera, full of anger, called the Furies, and ordered them to cast curses on the cow to torment her for eternity. In this way, the cruel creatures sent a nauseating cloud of flies that surrounded her day and night, feeding on her. After so much agony, Io begged the gods to end her ordeal, or to end her life, so Zeus, seeing the suffering of the animal, decided to intercede before his wife Hera for the nymph, and thus finally free her from everything. Zeus had to promise several things and accept a few more conditions so that Hera would agree to remove the curses. After a while, the goddess was convinced by her husband and freed Io. Finally, after so much suffering, the woman regained her freedom and original form, but she never returned to Olympus.